The gift and the chain. No one remembered where the elders came from. They existed before memory, before time, as it was measured by younger species. They were the architects of star lanes, the wardens of the galactic archives, the unseen hands that calibrated the expansion of civilization. Every spacefaring race knew them, not through diplomacy or war, but through whispers, through rules. The most important of those rules was not written in any treaty. It was spoken once, by a figure cloaked in starlight, to Earth's first ambassador at the edge of the Kepler threshold. You may grow, you may explore, you may defend, but you must never challenge us. It was not a threat. It was a command carved into history, and humanity obeyed. For a while, Admiral Tessa Rourke leaned against the observation glass of the UNV Horizons Bridge. Ahead of her, the sprawling trade station Epheron Prime glittered like a mechanical reef, anchored in the quiet gravity of a red dwarf. Frigates, shuttles, and alien vessels bustled around it in practiced chaos. "Status?" she asked without turning. Commander Malik's voice was crisp. Diplomatic envoys docked. No incident reported. The Epherons are nervous, as usual. Everyone's nervous these days. She didn't need to elaborate. Ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Council 23 years ago, Earth's presence in the stars had been tolerated, not embraced. The Council, an alliance of dozens of species, answered ultimately to the Elders, or more accurately, to the idea of them. In 2 decades, no human had ever seen an Elder's true form, not even the highest ambassadors. Their messages arrived through emissaries or encoded neural pulses, their decisions absolute, unchallengeable. Every now and then, a species grew too bold, and every time they vanished. Dr. Mikhail Voss once called it an engineered myth of divine retribution. Tessa just called it fear. She met Voss again that evening in the observation chamber. He was hunched over a holodeble, parsing alien glyphs like a priest interpreting prophecy. "You're still trying to decode the Talker fragment?" she asked. Voss gave a thin smile. "Try, yes. Succeeding, not quite." She approached, eyeing the rotating script. "Remind me, what is it?" "It's a pre-Elder relic, dug up on a dead world 3 sectors out, carbon dated to several million years before the Council's founding." And he tapped the display. "It suggests the Elders weren't always gods. At some point they fought, and they bled." Rourke frowned. "This isn't the kind of talk the Council approves of." He looked up, suddenly serious. "That's exactly the problem. Everyone obeys out of fear, not faith. We've confused obedience with survival." Back on Earth, Ambassador Kain Zhu stood before the Galactic Council, his calm demeanor masking the tension beneath. Representatives from dozens of species regarded him from elevated alcoves, many of them centuries old, their gazes unreadable. Zhu cleared his throat. "We appreciate the Council's continued cooperation with Earth. However, I must formally address the incident on the Talmarian border, where 2 of our trade vessels were destroyed by automated defenses belonging to an Elder-claimed sector." A murmur rippled through the hall. High Chancellor Valtherin, a serpentine being with a golden carapace, answered coldly. "Your vessels violated proximity protocols. The Elders' territories are not to be entered." "They didn't enter," Zhu replied carefully. "They were near, not within. We demand an explanation, or at least a response." Valtheron's gaze hardened. "You forget the rule." Silence fell. Zhu stood frozen. "We ask only for acknowledgement, not defiance." "And yet," Valtherin said, "you edge ever closer to the line. Take heed, Ambassador. The Elders have tolerated your ascent, but their patience is not eternal." Zhu bowed stiffly and left the chamber. He didn't speak until he was back aboard his vessel, in private. Then he whispered, "So this is how it starts." A week later, news reached Admiral Rourke on the horizon. A colony in the Helios expanse, over 30,000 settlers gone. No distress signals, no survivors, just scorched earth and silence. No war declared, no justification, no warning. The official response from the Council was vague, an anomaly. Investigation ongoing. The message from the Elders was even simpler. Withdraw. Rourke stood at the edge of the briefing room, arms crossed, jaw tight. Around her, the command team waited. "We all know who did it," she said, "and we all know the rule." A pause. But rules made in fear can only last so long. We asked for answers. They gave us fire. She looked at the stars beyond the window. Maybe it's time we stop asking. The spark in the void. The Helios expanse had always been quiet. Bordering elder-claimed space, the system's suns were ancient and red, its planets rich in minerals but devoid of life. For humanity, it was a perfect frontier, isolated enough to develop without interference, yet close enough to matter strategically. Now, Helios, for was silent. Scorched. 3 orbital satellites recorded the final milliseconds of its demise, a column of light piercing the atmosphere, then a ripple of implosion that folded the colony inward like crumpled metal. 30,000 souls, gone in less than a minute. The satellites transmitted their data automatically. A minute later, they too were gone. Admiral Rourke reviewed the footage again and again, her face stony under the cold glow of the hologram. "No weapons discharge?" she asked. Lieutenant Cass shook her head. "Nothing conventional. The energy signature is inconsistent. It doesn't match any known frequency. It's almost like the attack wasn't physical. Psychotronic?" Rourke suggested. "Maybe. Or something worse." Rourke clenched her fists. "We've been pushed around before. Sanctioned. Blockaded. But we've never been erased." She turned to her communications officer. "Send this to High Command. Full encryption. And quietly." On Earth, chaos festered beneath the surface. News of the destruction had leaked, first on obscure feeds, then in bursts across the planetary network. Debates exploded in media channels. Was an elder attack? A natural disaster? A political false flag? Protests ignited across the megacities. "We want answers. The rule kills. No more silence." President Nakai addressed the planet from the orbital Capitol Tower, her voice steady but weary. "We grieve for those lost in Helios. While we await answers, we must not act in haste. Humanity's survival in the stars depends on restraint. The Elder's authority is absolute. Provoking them risks annihilation." But not everyone agreed. On a remote research station orbiting Kepler 91, Dr. Mikhail Voss stared at the artifact again. The Talker fragment was older than the Council itself, an obsidian monolith inscribed with symbols that shimmered under directed energy. His recent breakthrough had translated one entire sequence. When the stars grew quiet, the Titans were struck down. Voss leaned back in his chair, mind racing. This wasn't mythology, it was history. The Elders weren't untouchable. They had enemies once, and they had lost. A voice from behind startled him. "Still chasing ghosts." Ambassador Zhu stepped into the lab, unannounced. "You came all this way?" Voss asked. Zhu nodded, eyes serious. "The Council isn't just stonewalling. They're scared, really scared. Whatever happened to Helios wasn't rogue behavior. It was permissioned. And you think they'll do it again? They already have." Zhu dropped a datapad on the desk. 3 small outposts gone dark. No pattern, no warnings. Just silence. Voss stared at the data. "We're being warned without words." Zhu nodded. "And Earth wants to bow, but I don't think the fleet will." Indeed, Admiral Rourke had already begun gathering her fleet. Unofficially, of course. 5 ships, a destroyer, 2 frigates, and 2 stealth corvettes, rendezvoused in the Eos Nebula. Their mission, coded as Opal Strike, was simple. Locate and observe an Elder relay station near the fringe of Helios territory. Nothing aggressive. Not yet. But everyone aboard knew the truth. This was a probe into forbidden space. At briefing, Rourke stood at the front of the room, her voice low but firm. "We don't know what they used to wipe out Helios, but we know who did it. And we know they believe they don't have to explain." A murmur passed through the crew. Rourke continued, "We're not here to fire first. We're here to see what they're hiding. If we're caught, we were never here." One by one, the officers nodded. As the fleet slipped into the dark beyond the trade lanes, stealth fields humming, Ambassador Zhu returned to the council chambers for what would be his last official session. He requested emergency deliberation. He was denied. Then he stood and spoke anyway. 3 colonies gone, he said. No claims of responsibility. No warnings. No dialogue. Valtheron's golden eyes narrowed. We warned you long ago, human. Do not challenge what you cannot understand. Zhu met his gaze. Understanding is precisely what we seek. Obedience without truth is slavery. You test the rule. Zhu didn't flinch. And what happens when it breaks? Silence followed him out of the chamber. Far across the void, the human fleet approached the Elder Relay Station. It hovered like a spider in the web of gravity, silent, dark, watching. And as the lead corvette drew within scanning range, its instruments screamed. A pulse of energy erupted from the station. Shields failed. Alarms rang. Then came the voice, not through comms, but inside their minds. You were warned. A second pulse fired. The corvette disintegrated. And with it, the line was crossed. Ashes of the Forbidden. The UNS Valor, flagship of the Opal Strike fleet, drifted in silence. Where once 5 ships had moved as one, now only 3 remained. The lead corvette was vaporized in an instant, its hull shattered by a psychic pulse that bypassed every defense. The second, the Rising Spear, limped with a crippled drive, its AI core burned out. Admiral Rourke stood on the command deck, eyes locked on the view screen. The Elder Relay Station hung in space like a wound in the void, pulsating with cold violet light. They didn't fire a weapon, Commander Malik said, voice tight. They spoke. The crew on the Spear. Some are comatose. Others are screaming. Message confirmed, said the comms officer. Same phrase, repeated across all bands and neurological links. You were warned. Rourke's knuckles whitened on the edge of the console. Well, she muttered, warning received. Back on Earth, chaos had evolved into fury. Helios, then the border colonies. Now, leaked footage of the fleet's ambush had gone viral. An unfiltered recording of the psychic pulse, overlaid with sensor readings that defied explanation. Ships torn apart, pilots convulsing in their seats. President Nakai stood before the Security Council, jaw clenched, eyes sunken. They have made no declaration, she said. No justification, just slaughter in silence. I ask this council, what is the cost of inaction? Some call for peace, some for withdrawal, but others, more and more each day, echoed the words of old Earth. Si vis pacem, parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Dr. Voss found himself under armed escort in Geneva's High Science Bureau, not as a prisoner, yet, but as something equally precarious, a man with dangerous knowledge. He laid out his findings before the Council of Inquiry. This artifact isn't just symbolic, he said. It's a blueprint, a record of the Talker's final stand against the Elders, millions of years ago. He tapped the hollow projection. They fought with resonance-based weaponry, frequency disruptors that bypass shielding, targeting neural and subquantum fields. And they almost won. Someone scoffed. They're extinct. Not because they failed, Voss said, because the Elders wiped history clean afterward. A long pause followed. Can we build it? Someone asked quietly. Voss exhaled. We already are. In orbit above Mars, Project Helix was activated under black clearance protocols. Using the Talker designs, Earth's engineers and AI cores began constructing humanity's first anti-Elder weapon. It wasn't a bomb or a beam. It was something older, a harmonic resonance generator designed to disrupt the Elders at the molecular level. It would take months, maybe longer, but the countdown had begun. Meanwhile, Rourke's crippled fleet limped into the Andrus Drift, barely escaping the zone of Elder influence. The relay station had made no move to follow. It didn't need to. Rourke stood before her command crew, weary but unbowed. We crossed the line, she said, and we paid for it. She looked around. But now we know. The Elders aren't invincible. They bleed through fear. They hide behind myths. And we've just torn the veil. A moment of silence passed. Then she added, we're no longer explorers. We're resistance. Ambassador Zhu received her message days later, encrypted and buried in false diplomatic traffic. They attacked first. The relay uses subquantic neural waveforms. We found their limits. Stay ready. Rourke. Zhu stood on the balcony of his embassy ship, watching the stars drift by. He knew what would happen next. The Elders would not tolerate resistance. Not twice. He tapped a secure line to Earth and spoke just one word. Mobilize. Across the galaxy, the other races watched. Most said nothing. A few whispered in dark corners. But one, the Arksani, a reptilian race long subdued under Elder dominion, sent a message to Earth in ancient code. We remember the Titans, too. It was the first hint that humanity would not stand alone. On the edge of Elder territory, deep inside a forgotten asteroid field, a single stealth drone pulsed to life. It had been launched months before, an autonomous probe buried in a tomb of metal. Its signal was faint, but the data it carried was priceless. Energy readings, relay structure scans, waveform mapping. All of it beamed back to Mars. And with it, one crucial fact. The Elder relay could be destroyed the day the silence broke. The final vote took 13 minutes. In the chambers beneath Earth's orbital defense platform Aegis Prime, humanity's inner council gathered. Admirals, presidents, scientists, and one ghost of diplomacy, Ambassador Zhu. 3 options sat before them: submission, retreat, or retaliation. Zhu stood last to speak. We've tried obedience. We tried silence. And still, they burn our colonies and speak only through fear. This vote isn't about war. It's about dignity, about the right to stand without chains. The vote passed, unanimously. Operation Sovereign Dawn began that same night. On Mars, inside the heart of the Helix core, the weapon hummed. It wasn't a cannon. It wasn't a bomb. It was a harmonic resonance engine, modeled on pre-Elder Talker schematics, designed to strike not matter, but essence. To unravel the psionic lattice that powered Elder technology, biology, and perception itself. It was the equivalent of a divine scalpel. And Earth had sharpened it well. Admiral Rourke arrived aboard the carrier Invictus, now retrofitted to carry the Helix core into battle. Her command fleet was small, 20 ships, half experimental, all untested against Elder forces. But this wasn't a battle of size. It was a test of whether myths could bleed. At the edge of Helios, the Elder relay station still pulsed, untouched and unchallenged since the strike that shattered the Corvette Vigil. Now it faced a second fleet. The humans came without stealth. No cloaks, no false transmissions. The message was clear: we are not afraid. Inside the Invictus, Dr. Voss monitored the core's alignment. Frequency lock achieved. Stabilizing phase loop. Rourke gave the order. Hold position. Let them see us. For 3 hours, nothing happened. No drones. No weapons. Just silence. Then, without warning, the stars bent. A rift opened above the relay, distorting light and space itself. An Elder ship emerged. Not a vessel in any conventional sense, but a construct of folded time and radiant intent, larger than logic and darker than space. The crew felt it before they saw it. Minds trembled, memories blurred, reality thinned. Then came the voice. You break the rule. You embrace extinction. Rourke stood firm. We remember Helios. We remember the ones who vanished without voice. She nodded to Voss. Light it. The Helix core activated. Waves of invisible force rippled from the Invictus. Not heat, not pressure, but pure dissonance. The resonance struck the Elder ship mid-approach. It faltered. The stars steadied. The psionic field dimmed. The Elder construct spasmed, fractals twisting, hull unraveling into quantum threads. Its psychic presence screamed, not in language, but in raw anguish. It was the sound of a god choking on its own name. The fleet pressed the advantage. All 20 ships fired conventional weapons into the weakened hull. Missiles, railguns, and plasma spears met a target that was, for the first time, vulnerable. The Elder ship cracked, and then collapsed. Not exploded, not destroyed. It simply folded inward and ceased to exist. The relay station dimmed. Its violet glow faded. Its field died. The silence was broken. News spread faster than light. Earth had done the impossible. An Elder ship destroyed. Not evaded, not survived, defeated. The Galactic Council convulsed. Some called it blasphemy. Others saw hope. Within a week, quiet messages arrived. The Arksani offered old maps of Elder Vaults. The Draxan Confederacy pledged stealth ships. Even the silent Yuoltari sent a 3-word message. At last, balance. But not all welcomed the change. Valtherin, High Chancellor of the Council, stood before the assembly. The humans have brought war to the gods, he said. And we, by standing idle, may be next. The chamber split. Lines were drawn. Sides chosen. On Earth, Zhu returned to a cheering crowd. But he didn't smile. He met with Rourke in a quiet bunker beneath Geneva. We've lit a beacon, he said. But beacons call attention. Rourke nodded. Let them come. Zhu shook his head. They will. And not just the elders. We've shaken the order of the galaxy. Empires will rise. Others will fall. We didn't start a war. We started a new age. Then we'd better win it, Rourke replied. Far from Earth, deep in elder space, a council of another kind convened. Not of beings, not of species, but of wills. Ancient, vast, and wounded. One spoke its thought like thunder. The humans remember too much. Another answered. Then let them remember how it ends. And somewhere in the deep dark, something stirred. Not in anger, in fear.